I remember that night as if it was carved into my soul. My hair was still messy, my perfume was still lingering on my skin, and my body was still warm from the touch of another man. Yet there I was, slipping quietly into the house I shared with my husband. My shoes were in my hand, my steps cautious on the wooden floor. My wedding ring caught the faint glow of the hallway light, and it felt heavier than it had ever felt before. When I entered our bedroom, he stirred. My husband, Mark, had just returned from his night shift at the hospital. He looked exhausted, his eyes red, but the first thing he did when he saw me was smile. That same soft, patient smile I had always loved. He pulled back the covers and whispered for me to get in. I slid beneath the sheets, my body trembling from more than just the cold. He kissed my forehead, tucked the blanket up to my chin, and told me to rest. I lay there in silence, while the weight of what I had just done crushed me from within. Before I go further, let me pause to say this. Thank you so much for being here. To everyone who has subscribed, I truly appreciate you. To all my new and returning viewers who are yet to subscribe, a big thank you as well. I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button because it serves as the fuel and energy that keeps powering this channel. And please, do not forget to share your thoughts in the comment section. I really want to know what you think about what you are hearing. Now, let us continue. My name is Emily. I am a 34-year-old woman from a quiet suburban town in Ohio. I have been married to Mark for 9 years. Mark is a kind man, a steady man. He has worked tirelessly as a nurse to provide for us, often taking double shifts to ensure our bills were always paid. He was the sort of husband women said did not exist anymore. Reliable, loyal, gentle. And yet, even with all of his devotion, I betrayed him. The man who pulled me into this spiral was Ryan. He worked at my office. Tall, confident, with a way of looking at me that made me feel like the only woman in the room. It began innocently, conversations about deadlines, lunches that stretched too long, jokes shared over coffee. But somewhere between the late nights at the office and the subtle brushing of hands, I felt something spark. Something I convinced myself I had been missing at home. The first time it happened was in the parking lot after work. It had been raining, the kind of storm that left everything slick and shining. We stood too close under the same umbrella, and when the thunder cracked above us, I found myself leaning into him. He kissed me, and instead of pulling away, I kissed him back. My wedding ring pressed against his chest as I held onto him, and I felt the sharp sting of guilt even in that moment. Sudden shopping trips that had nothing to do with shopping. Ryan had a way of making me feel alive, reckless, wanted in a way I told myself had faded at home. I knew it was wrong, but the wrongness was part of the thrill. Every time I returned home, I felt like two women living inside the same body. One who smiled and cooked dinner beside her husband, and another who surrendered to passion in hidden places. That night, the night that marked the beginning of the end, Ryan and I met at a hotel just outside of town. The kind of place where the lights flickered and the walls were too thin. I remember standing in front of the mirror, adjusting my dress, my wedding ring shining under the lamp. I should have taken it off. I should have looked at it and reminded myself of the vows I had made. Instead, I left it on, almost daring myself to carry the shame into what I was about to do. The hours I spent with Ryan blurred into a haze of touch and whispers. But as soon as it was over, the reality of what I had done came crashing back. The passion that had felt intoxicating moments before now tasted bitter. I drove home with the windows rolled down, trying to breathe, trying to wash away the scent of betrayal that clung to me. When I stepped through the door, I half expected Mark to be awake, waiting, suspicious. But he was not. He had just come back from work himself, and exhaustion was written all over his face. Yet even in his tiredness, his first instinct was to care for me. He took one look at me, and instead of asking questions, instead of noticing the redness in my cheeks or the way my hands shook, he tucked me into bed. He kissed me like I was his whole world. And in that moment, I realized the depth of my betrayal. I had just come from another man's arms, and here was my husband, wrapping me in his love, believing I was his and his alone. I closed my eyes that night, but sleep never came. All I could feel was the crushing weight of guilt pressing down on me. All I could hear was the echo of Ryan's laughter in my ears and the steady breathing of the man who trusted me lying beside me. I knew something inside me had shifted, and there would be no turning back. That was the night the double life began. The morning after that night, I could barely look at him. Mark stood in the kitchen, brewing coffee, humming softly the way he always did before heading off to work. His hair was messy, his scrubs wrinkled, but his presence felt so warm, so safe. When he handed me my cup and kissed my cheek, I thought I would break down right there. But I forced a smile. I pretended everything was normal. On the surface, life continued as it always had. But inside me, a storm was raging. I told myself that what happened with Ryan would stay a one-time mistake. That I would bury it, forget it, and never repeat it. But temptation has a way of clawing its way back, especially when it comes dressed as attention, desire, and escape. Ryan knew exactly what he was doing. His texts were sly at first, innocent enough that if Mark had ever seen them, they would not raise suspicion. But I knew the undertone. I knew what his "missing you already" really meant. The worst part was I wanted it. I wanted to feel that intensity again, that reckless passion. So when he asked if I could meet him again, I did not say no. It became a pattern, a dangerous rhythm. I would kiss my husband goodbye, tell him I was working late, and then drive to Ryan's apartment. Every time I crossed that threshold, I told myself it would be the last. But once Ryan touched me, once I felt his lips, all logic disappeared. My wedding ring would sometimes scrape against his skin when I touched him, and every time it did, my stomach twisted. But still I stayed. At home, I became an actress. Smiling at dinner, laughing at Mark's stories, folding laundry while my mind replayed the things I had done just hours before. Sometimes, when Mark reached for me in bed, I froze, terrified that he would notice the difference. Terrified that he would feel the guilt radiating from my body. But Mark was too trusting, too blind to even consider betrayal. He thought the distance was stress, or maybe exhaustion. And I let him believe it. The guilt never left me. It clung to me like smoke. When Mark would sit across from me at the dinner table, his eyes soft and full of love, I wanted to scream. How could he not see it? How could he not sense the truth? But then again, why would he? Mark had built his entire life around me. His loyalty was unwavering. His trust was absolute. He never suspected that the woman he tucked into bed every night was sneaking away into another man's arms. The double life began to take its toll. I was lying constantly. Excuses piled up. Traffic jams, late meetings, errands that made no sense. I had to keep track of them all, weaving a web of deception so tight that I barely recognized my own life anymore. Every time Mark asked a simple question, my heart skipped a beat. I was terrified that one slip would unravel everything. And yet, part of me craved the danger. I felt addicted, not just to Ryan, but to the thrill of it all. It was as if I was standing on the edge of a cliff, daring the ground to give way beneath me. The risk, the secrecy, the stolen hours, it made me feel alive in a way my safe, steady marriage did not. But the cracks began to show. One evening, Mark came home earlier than usual. I was in the shower, and my phone was on the nightstand. When I stepped out, hair dripping, towel wrapped around me, I saw him sitting on the edge of the bed. My phone was in his hand. My blood ran cold. He looked up at me and smiled. "Your mom called," he said, handing it back. My knees nearly buckled from the relief. But deep down, I knew my luck would not hold forever. If he had scrolled just a little further, if one of Ryan's messages had popped up, everything would have exploded. The paranoia grew. I started deleting messages constantly, erasing call logs, making sure there was no trace of Ryan anywhere. But no matter how careful I was, I could not shake the feeling that time was running out. Ryan, on the other hand, was not satisfied with stolen moments anymore. He began pushing for more. He wanted dinners in public, weekends away, risks that terrified me. "Leave him," he said more than once, his voice heated, insistent. "You do not love him the way you love me. You belong with me." But the thought of leaving Mark paralyzed me. As much as I had betrayed him, as much as I had tangled myself in this web, I still loved him in my own broken way. He was safety. He was home. He was the man who tucked me in when I came back from my betrayal, oblivious to the truth. The two lives I was living were pulling me apart. At work, I was Ryan's secret lover. At home, I was Mark's devoted wife. And every day, the weight of the deception grew heavier, suffocating me. I thought I could keep it all under control. I thought I was careful enough, clever enough. But affairs have a way of revealing themselves, no matter how deep you try to bury them. And I was about to learn that the hard way. Because one night, Mark walked into a truth he could no longer ignore. The night it all came crashing down was an ordinary Wednesday. Or, at least, it started that way. Mark had left for his night shift, kissing me gently before heading out the door. I watched him go, and instead of relief, I felt an emptiness that gnawed at me. Ryan had been pushing again, asking me to meet him, telling me he was tired of being a secret. Against every rational thought, I agreed. I told myself it would be the last time. I told myself I needed closure. But the truth was I wanted him. I wanted the thrill, the fire, the dangerous taste of something forbidden. I slipped into Ryan's apartment like I had countless times before. But this time, I did not feel the rush. I felt dread. Something was different. Ryan sensed it too. He tried to hold me, to pull me into the comfort of our usual routine, but I was distracted. My phone buzzed again and again from the nightstand, Mark's name flashing across the screen. I ignored it, heart pounding. When I finally left, guilt wrapped itself around me so tightly I could barely breathe. I drove home in silence, headlights cutting through the dark streets of our quiet suburban neighborhood. When I pulled into the driveway, I froze. Mark's car was there. My stomach twisted into knots. He was not supposed to be home yet. I stepped inside, trying to steady my breathing. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Then I saw him. He was sitting at the kitchen table, my phone in front of him, his hands clasped tightly together. His eyes were red, but his face was hard, unreadable. "Where were you?" His voice was calm, but it cut sharper than any scream could have. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Excuses swirled in my mind, but none of them could survive under his gaze. He already knew. He picked up the phone and turned it toward me. The messages were there, clear as day. Ryan's words, my replies, the proof of everything I had tried to bury. The silence stretched. Then Mark let out a sound I had never heard before, a broken laugh, bitter and hollow. "All this time," he said, shaking his head. "While I was working, while I was loving you, you were with him." I tried to speak. I tried to tell him that it was a mistake, that I still loved him, that it was not what he thought. But the words sounded empty, pathetic, even to me. Mark stood slowly, his chair scraping against the tile. "Do you know what the worst part is?" His voice cracked now, pain breaking through the anger. "I tucked you in after my shifts. I held you, thinking I was protecting you, comforting you. And all along you had just come back from him." The truth in his words shattered me. I reached for him, but he pulled away like my touch burned him. "There is no fixing this," he said quietly, his voice heavy with finality. "You broke something that cannot be put back together." The next few minutes blurred together. He walked past me, grabbed his jacket, and left the house. The slam of the door echoed like a gunshot. I stood there in the kitchen, my body shaking, my ring still glinting on my finger like a cruel reminder. For years, it had been a symbol of love, of unity, of vows whispered under an altar. Now it felt like a shackle, binding me to the very betrayal that had destroyed us. Days turned into weeks, and Mark never came back. Papers arrived eventually, cold and formal, spelling out the end of a marriage that had once been my everything. I signed them with trembling hands, knowing I had no one to blame but myself. Ryan tried to comfort me at first, tried to convince me that we could finally be together without hiding. But the fire between us quickly turned to ash. Without the secrecy, without the thrill, there was nothing left. I looked at him and saw only the man who had helped me destroy my life. It did not take long before I cut him out completely. And so, I was left alone. Alone in the house that once felt warm, now empty and cold. Alone with the memories of a husband who had loved me so deeply that he never even suspected the betrayal. Alone with the image of him sitting at that kitchen table, his heart breaking in silence. The world sees infidelity as a choice, a thrill, a mistake you can move past. But what they do not tell you is that once you cross that line, you can never go back. The trust is gone. The love is tainted. The damage is permanent. I cheated while wearing my wedding ring. I betrayed the man who tucked me in after his long shifts, who carried the weight of our life on his shoulders, who asked for nothing but loyalty in return. And for that, I lost everything. There was no forgiveness.
No reconciliation.
No second chance. Just the hollow echo of what used to be, and the heavy truth that my own choices destroyed it. And that is how my marriage ended.